Hey everybody, it's Irene with BrainStormAcres. My camera looks just a little bit crooked, so we're going to fix that. I sometimes get asked, like, what do I do when Henry's off running around doing things, or what sort of projects do I do, like when I'm watching TV or something like that. So behind you guys, like where you're standing right now, is the TV. And it's a decent sized TV. And this is our evening location, the sofa in the great room, which is a little bit of a trash pit right now because we're in the process of doing like 75 projects in here. But that's okay. That's not the point of this. The point of this is, what do I do in my spare time? Is there such a thing? Not really. So one of the things I do is I have a little tray table like this, and I work on things. So for instance, yesterday afternoon, I drew down a bunch of wire. Now, what does draw down mean? It means I took large wire and put it through a draw plate and made it into smaller wire. Now, why would I do that? Well, the process of drawing down wire, which I think I have shown in a previous video, makes it stretch and get smaller, but it also makes it springy. And when you're making something that looks like a safety pin, these are called fibulas, but they're basically the predecessor to a safety pin. We jokingly call them unsafe safety pins because they don't have a protector on the end like a modern safety pin would. When you're making something like this, you need something that's got some spring to it. So my wire, when it's newly drawn down, looks like this. Starts out 4 feet long and winds up about 6 feet long. And I've got a couple of those pieces on the floor sitting here, waiting to be used. I have a shorter piece over here that I purposefully grabbed because it lets me show stuff without wrestling with the 4 feet of other wire that kind of gets in the way when you're trying to do a video. So I have 3 different kinds of tools. I have 2 pairs of pliers, a pair of what they call flush cutters. That means that this particular type of cutter actually creates a flat or relatively flat edge on the wire. It does not do one of those pinchy looking things like you get from a regular pair of cutters. I also have a dowel, and I have a piece of thermoplastic. Thermoplastic is plastic that you can heat in hot water and then shape it. So I made a ring out of this, and that allows me to squish the metal with my thumb without denting my thumb. So one of the things I will do when I'm watching videos, I did this actually this morning. I was watching a video, I had finished eating breakfast, and I wanted to finish watching the video, but I didn't want to waste time, was I will make fibulas. So it just goes like this. I'm going to slow it way down. I do this about 4 times faster than this, because I've been doing it literally for years. And I have made, quite literally, thousands, if not tens of thousands of these. For wholesale purposes, I sell these in packs of 144. So that gives you an idea of how many I make. These are used to hold clothing together for people who want to wear Greek or Roman clothing. And the colonials and Civil War people in the United States use them for pinning up their skirts when it's muddy outside. So now I've got this little piece that's left over at the end. I can straighten that with my fingers. And then I have special cutters. Let me see if I can find one really quickly. Should be down here in the toolbox, because everybody has a toolbox underneath their side table in their living room. Yeah, I have 2 of them. And these are cool. I don't remember what the fancy name is for them. I'll look it up and give that to Henry. But these are set to 2 different lengths. This is for short pins. And this is for long pins, and since I have to do long pins for one of my custom orders, which I have to produce rather quickly, what this allows you to do is stick a piece of wire through there. It measures it. This is now trash, which I will stick over there. And this is now 1 3/4 inches long. So, and what I do is when I'm starting to do the cut work, I will check to make sure that something hasn't slid, because the bits and pieces out can slide, but what that gives me is that gives me a perfect length of wire for making dress pins, which are a very popular item, and I seem to be the only one currently in North America who's making what I call viable dress pins. In other words, some people make dress pins that look good, but mine you can actually use for what they were intended for. So I'll save that guy, and he'll go in a little pile with his friends, and he'll become a dress pin when he grows up. So that's the kind of thing that I do in my thousands of hours of spare time. Now, what else do I do? And last night I did something else. So let me switch to that setup. I'm not going to turn off the video. Henry has the option of leaving that on or not. But sometimes I still use this tray, but most of the time I don't. I just work using some stuff that I have stashed on the table here. Okay, I'm back. This is what is called knit chain. Now right now it looks wobbly and nubbly and funky, but it's not going to be wobbly and nubbly and funky when I finish it. It will look something like this. This is not shiny because this has been sitting in my toolbox, but it will get shiny, and it's very flexible. It's made by taking lengths of wire and wrapping them in a specific pattern onto other lengths of wire, and then you get this nice piece which you can turn into necklaces and bracelets and things like that. The big problem with knit chain, also called trichinopoly, is if you squash it, it's squashed. In other words, if I were to flatten this, I would not be able to repair it. I could cut a piece out of it, like if only one spot here, say that was mashed right there, I could cut that piece out and join it together with links and other pieces of metal if I wanted to. But the only other thing you can do with it is use it as trim on your sleeves or on your clothing, and we do actually find that in Birka, Sweden, in the graveyard there. We find smashed flat stuff like this. So accidents happened even in the Viking Age. But in order to be able to do this, I need two tools. I need that, which is a pair of pliers that has a kind of a pointy end to it. And it's smooth on the inside, so it's not going to chew anything up. And I need a pair of wire cutters. I have a roll of wire over here, which I brought over. I'm going to cut a piece. I recommend for beginners that they only cut about a foot, since I've been doing this for probably 20, 25 years, I don't know. And this I usually turn the light on for. It's bright in here, but I need some, it's like doing embroidery or something. I need that extra bit of light in order to make sure I can really see what I'm doing. And I am going to slide this together and create chain. Now I did this for probably, I don't know, maybe an hour last night while I was watching videos. I didn't feel like doing fibulas, so it gives me an option of doing something different. So this is kind of more like knitting in the sense that I can do it without thinking very much. Which is kind of nice sometimes when I'm watching a video. Sometimes it's nice to just be able to watch something and not have to think. You're doing a mechanical process, and you can just do it over and over again. You don't need to use a pair of pliers to pull it. I tend to because I'm doing what I'd call production. In other words, I'm doing a lot of this. Most people will do it, 10 minutes here, 15 minutes there. I might do it for a couple of hours, and I need to not overstress my hands. So just using a pair of pliers at certain times in the process relieves a lot of the pressure on my hands. Now you'll notice I'm also using good quality pliers. When I first learned to do this, I had a pair of cheapy pliers from Pakistan that did not have any padding on them. I actually wound up with bruises on the palm of my hands, which is never a good thing, because I was being too enthusiastic in terms of my force that I was applying to the wire. And I was making really nice pieces, but I was kind of wrecking my hands. And you can't do that when you do this sort of thing for a living. You have to be aware that you are taking care of yourself at all times. Ergonomics is important. So making sure that I'm comfortable in terms of my body positioning is important. Sometimes I have to bring in additional visual help in the form of either brighter lights or what they call an optivisor, which is basically a very silly looking headpiece that you can look through to be able to see your stuff up close. I have optivisors with all different levels of magnification, and they work really great. I know people who use that sort of thing just for embroidery work because, well, you can only see so well. Even if your eyes are properly adjusted, you may want to see better than that if you're doing fancy work. And you don't want to ruin things because you couldn't see what you were doing. And some things are just more difficult, like, oh, the worst thing I can possibly think of off the top of my head is having to rip out a seam on black fabric with black thread. For some reason, that's even harder, for me at least, than white thread on white fabric. So, yeah, that's not a good idea. I shouldn't say it's not a good idea. I would say that's not fun. How's that? Okay, and see, all I'm going to do is I'm going to just continue this around and around and around, which is what I've done here. And I will get a shot. See if I can get this camera in super close so you can see exactly what I'm doing here. And I actually teach this when I go to events. It's one of the things I teach. And I am proud to say that there have only been a couple of instances. When you learn a hand skill like this, there are times when you learn a hand skill and you go like, I can do that, but I just don't enjoy it. And I totally get that because, yeah, I've done that too. But in my years of teaching this, and I have been teaching this for probably at least 22 years, maybe a little longer, there have only been one or two people. There was one gentleman who just had, his pinky was like my thumb. He had monster hands. He just simply did not have the manual dexterity, eye-hand coordination, etc., to be able to do small work. But other than that, my goal is to always have my students succeed, and I have a very good success rate. Even times now, I had one this year that was different. I've never had it happen before, and like I say, however many years of teaching it, she was able to do this pattern backwards. But my conclusion was, nothing wrong with it. You would not be able to tell the difference if you looked at something archaeologically between what she did and what I was doing. It's just that she does it in reverse order somehow. And it was very interesting. And it was very beautiful work, and I said, keep up the good work, and here's some more wire. So, you know, as I tell students when I teach them, we don't have a video of anyone doing this. All we have is the final result. So we have figured out how to do it, but we don't know if that's how they really did it. There are many different ways to create the same types of patterns when you're working with either cord or wire. So all we care about is the final results. And obviously they wouldn't have had nice, neat little pliers like this. My student kits include a, basically a small, oh, I'm going to draw a giant blank. I'm thinking ice pick is because it's like an ice pick. But it's just a small, sharp piece of wire that they can use for, like right now, this section here is a little tight, and I need to get under the wire. I can slide the tip of this under there, and they would do the same thing with their little, we call it our pokey bit. But let me see if I can get the camera in close to show how this actually is done. What I have to figure out is how far away from the screen I need to keep the item in order for you guys to be able to see what I'm doing. I'm sorry I'm moving so much. Hope I'm not making anybody seasick. Let's see that next spot there. Right like that. Obviously Henry's going to have to take some sections out of this. What I'm trying to do is get some steady spots in between the moving spots. That's how it works. There we go. So that's just one of the main kinds of things that I do. Sometimes I do handwork like on sewing and stuff too, but that's just sewing. That's nothing different than anybody else would do. I do very nice seams, I have to admit. I prefer to roll my cuff and collar seams because it gives a nicer, neater look. And it wears better because if I'm going to bother making something by hand, I do not want to have it wearing out because the seams ravel at the cuffs or the collar. So, onward. I have irrigation work to do this morning. The large box store that I went to the other day did have some replacement parts that I needed. So I'm going to finish that project next. We'll see you in the greenhouse.